So let's move on to our second question. So I guess in a new normal world where purchasing behaviors are changing, Chris talked about the different phases and restrictions, obviously, to bricks to mortar grocery in place. What are the consideration that marketers should factor in to maximize both offline and online channels? Chris talked to, people flocking online, or we all think people are flocking to online. How long is that going to last, I suppose, is also another question. How are you seeing this play out, I guess, Ajay, in terms of maximizing both offline and online channels from your perspective?
Absolutely. I think I'll kind of steal some of the answer that Chris gave, which is about understanding, taking a step back, actually just taking a pause and thinking, okay, well, what's really happening outside? Okay. In this arena, it's quite easy to say, right, let's go behind e-commerce. Let's just exploit that channel. We are not on e-commerce. I think these are all immediate steps. Absolutely. You can go and think about it. But the beauty is where you take a step back and start thinking about, let's track what is the size of the prize if we go there. Gather the insight from consumers and shoppers. When the food trends are changing, when in-home consumption is changing, people, media, consumption behaviors are changing. They're more at home. You know, what really happens is it's the insight that we need to gather and then finally go out to activation. So once you have those insights and when you have done the tracking bit around it, only then you're able to actually take some right decisions. And you probably heard about the quote from Ernberg Bass from Brian Sharp around driving the mental availability and physical availability. There is a big need around now to kind of almost change that and add a new attribute to it, which is around digital availability, which has its own fundamentals that we need to look at. And once you have that tracking, tracing, consumer insight, activation, then you look at the holistic picture of e-com or online and offline social channels together.
And that's really nice, Ajay. Thank you for that, because I think there's a lot of insights, obviously, from data that can help some of that thinking, sort of real-time insights, and just also the common sense, I guess. We've talked in the past, you and I, about data informed decisions, but you've obviously also talked about common sense, putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer. And I'm supposing that that is something that everybody at Kellogg's does on a daily basis. How do you marry up, to build on your answer, how do you marry up the data and insights with the common sense?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's best to take my own personal example, right? I mean, before COVID, I wasn't doing these online groceries, right? I mean, it was an experience. We would go out, and we generally buy our groceries from multiple retailers, right? So somebody does really nice fruits, I will go there. Somebody does really nice frozen food, I'll go there. But then after COVID, we don't have that luxury. I don't have that luxury of going to different places, and you want to be safe and secure in the house. We have to pick one retailer or at least two. And what I'm seeing is that even now, when we are able to go into different grocery stores, my consumption or my weekly cycle that I have created on online with our loved Tesco is continuing on, right? So it's just going on as normal, whereas I'm topping up my groceries like every week sort of thing, or a couple of days when you need something from the local store. So I'm even more valuable to Tesco than I was before when I'm buying them from both the channels. But I don't see Tesco as two different entities. For me, it's the shop down the road and then the online, they both are Tesco. So you become even more valuable to that retailer. I think, yeah, that's the beauty of it. Us see everything in different lenses of online, offline, but as a consumer, as a shopper, don't really, it's about the convenience, it's about the availability that comes first, which is where digital availability is the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's really cool about what you just said is it's kind of, you've got the data and insight, but, let's take a step back and also think about the reality, common sense. How are we living our lives here? Not everybody's shopping 100% online nowadays. And I love what you said, that this, it's not about online and digital, that's just to the consumer, it's just Tesco or, Walmart or whatever the brand might be, Target. So I love that. Now, Chris, sorry, we took a while there. Coming to you in terms of the new normal world and purchasing behaviours, what are your thoughts on online, offline from a media and wider marketing perspective, and what's going to potentially happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, mostly, really to build on what Ajay's been saying. I mean, fundamentally, what are we trying to do? We want to maximise the opportunity for people to purchase, and one sort of fundamental rule of doing that is to market, advertise the right product, at the right time, the right place, at the right moment. Just because more sales have flipped online doesn't mean that everyone's media consumption has flipped online. There have been huge increases, certainly in the more strict lockdown periods, in consumption of TV, in anything that's consumed in the house, and that can include podcasts, radio, magazines, whatever it may be. People were consuming their media in the house, and even though we're now beyond lockdown, who knows what's going to happen next month? We'll probably all be back in it again. But even as people are moving around more, there is still more consumption going on in the house. That's important. That's fundamental about where they're consuming their media. Where they're fulfilling that sale, I would argue it matters a good deal less. There's no point in pushing all of my ad spend, ad dollars online just because a big chunk of my sales are now realized online. People are still consuming their media in similar ways. Where that's changed, that's where you should make a change in terms of how you advertise. But don't fall into the trap of just thinking because more sales are realized online, are people even viewing that many more sort of advertisements? Yes, again, possibly, but that's down to media consumption, not down to where sales are being realized. And I think just to sort of finish off that, what matters, as it always has mattered, and we've talked a little bit about the fundamentals already, and I think it's worth just reiterating that. What is the path to purchase? What is that journey? How and when can we influence consumers on that journey as they sort of end it with buying a product? And that is what matters. It doesn't really matter so much where those sales are realized, apart from the impact that has on potentially media marketing consumption.
That's brilliant. Fantastic, Chris. And a question for you then on what you said, and I think you're taking obviously a very seasoned approach here, which is let's just not assume that all purchases are realized online. I guess the question is that if we're sort of thinking about consumers spending a lot of time in front of their laptops as we are today, holding a mobile phone or watching more Netflix or just consuming a lot more screen time, and advertisers potentially trying to optimize that with advertising, is there an opportunity for some advertisers to surprise and delight in non-digital channels? Is there an opportunity to kind of actually go the other way and go outdoor? Assuming that some people will be driving around and walking around or using other media in intelligent, clever ways because they potentially could be cutting through better.
I think, yeah, I mean, I would think that's a very good point, and it comes back to out of home advertising, cinema advertising in the weeks in April probably wasn't a great use of your dollars. People weren't outside, cinemas were closed, etc. Clearly. However, it always comes back to sort of almost how much is it costing you to be effective in that media, in that channel? How much is it? What is the cost per effective reach point in a way? If out of home rates tumble because the demand isn't there, people are still out of the house more so at the moment than 2 months ago. Especially if you're doing something, as you mentioned, sort of unique, different in that channel, then it can be a very good way of doing it. It's much more important, I would say, to think about the cost to effectiveness sort of ratio of your advertising investment across channels. And if you can do something that no one else is doing, you're more likely to cut through. That makes each reach point, each effective reach point, even more so. So yeah, it's a very good point.